Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Comparing Clipboards podcast. I'm your host, Luke Lewis, here with my co-host, Erica Chapa. Erica, how are you doing today?
I'm just doing so good. I've taken like 5 naps today because I just wanted to be super prepared. So here I am. How are you?
That quarantined life.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm doing great. We got our first guest today. I'm excited. I want to introduce you guys to Brian Calimpong. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And Ron Benavente, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us. Just to introduce you guys to who our guests are today, we're going to go ahead and start with Ron. Ron just had his 25th year of coaching. Older than I am. That's more years coaching than I've been alive.
Thank you.
15 years as experience as a varsity head coach, 12 years experience coaching club, 8 years as an official, and 12 years as a club director. Also, Mr. Brian. Brian has quite the resume. He's been all over the place. Brian has experience with high school volleyball at Gilroy and Christopher High School, where he has been the assistant boys and girls director of volleyball operations at Gilroy High. He was part of a TCAL championship in 2011. I remember that team. That team was very good. He was also the head girls varsity coach at Gilroy High School in 2011. He was the head varsity coach at Gilroy High School from 2012 to 2018, where he also won a championship there in 2012. He's not just high school. He's also at the college level at Gavilan College, where he's been an assistant indoor women's volleyball coach since 2018 and a beach coach since 2019, where they've won 2 conference titles indoors at a state semifinalist, as well as a conference championship in beach and a state semifinalist on the beach side. But that's not it. He also has club experience, where Brian has been a coach at 4 different clubs and a club director at 3 different. And what he didn't mention on here is Brian is also an official. So I'm really excited to have these guys on for a lot of reasons. 1, I just like these guys. And 2, they give different perspectives from not just a coach, not just an official, but also club director. So they see it from a lot of different lenses here. Chapa and I have both coached in the same club as them. We've coached with them. And, one thing that I really respect about these guys is the way they approach practices and their practice planning. And that's what I want to get started with. So, my first question to you guys is, what are some of your goals of practices when you're planning this out? Like, what do you want to accomplish in a practice when you come into the gym? Either of you can start.
Brian, you want to go first, or?
Sure. Obviously coaching is fluid and, you learn every day and you learn, throughout your process. But, some things recently that I definitely included in a practice plan would be just to create a learning environment where we can at least get 1% better. It's something that's, tangible, attainable for the kids and for myself. Just looking not only that the kids have to get better or the athletes that we're coaching, but that myself as a coach has to be better in the way that we present the information, the way that we display the information, so that ultimately they're going to grow and love the game a little bit more.
Love it.
Fitting it into different, we all learn a little bit differently. If you follow motor learning science, is it whole versus part training, which simply broken down is, do you let them produce or play the full game of volleyball, or do you break it down into Ron's favorite, tossing volleyballs to kids? That's a little bit different at my level, in the last few years at 14s versus who may be very beginners in the game, and, versus a 17s, 18s, 16s team that they can play the whole game. They're just learning to do it at a higher and more proficient level. Somebody that I truly follow is Trevor Reagan. He has a website called Train Ugly. And so where it's all based on motor learning science, and he's been a big resource for me to kind of get me to where the drills may not be going as directed, or we're not obtaining our goals of, cooperative 20 or some of those, but that's going to translate better. So definitely, not that we're trying to get 20 balls over the net, or we're trying to get 10 kills before we get out of the drill, but is the information really transferring, are definitely goals of mine when I'm trying to get the team to reach their goals within a practice or, within the season.
And you just totally hit something that I know that Chapa and I really think about a lot when we coach together is, are you just trying to get through a drill, or are you trying to beat the drill? Because you have some kids that you mentioned a lot about the learning process. Are they actually understanding what's going on? Are they learning what our goal is in this, or are they just going through the process until you say the drill's over? So I really liked what you said, especially at that younger age, because you get to see them both, 8th graders that are getting ready to try out for high school, and then you have girls at Gav that are trying to play at the next level, and that's just a different approach. So yeah, I really like that. Ron, what are some of your goals when you plan a practice?
Well, I mean, just to kind of semi-piggyback off Brian, the one thing about the drill aspect is the goal that I found, especially this year, was, coaching 13s again, was not getting stuck, and having your assistant kind of wake you up to the fact, like, we have to move, we have to, like, do something different to get out of being stuck, because then, just like you said, are people just going through the motions, and then it's getting worse? So our goal was going into this was try not to sit there for 20 minutes doing the same thing, and not getting anywhere. And sometimes you have to leave a drill to come back to the drill, and you'll find that most of the time you come back, they actually get better, and they get through it, So you have, I don't know, I go into some practices with assistants, anybody who is with me, they have no problem telling me, like, Coach, we gotta get out of this, because they're not gaining anything from it. So
and not to stray too far off of what we're talking about here, but I wanted to hit on this when you mentioned assistants, because I know you and I have talked about assistant coaches a lot, and you just mentioned that you have assistants that speak up saying, hey, we got to get out of this, we got to move on. There's a lot of people that are starting their coaching careers as assistant coaches that need to learn that, kind of where that line is of, when do I say something? What do I say? I had that exact problem when I first started coaching. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. But as you just mentioned, that's what really helps a practice get going and maybe get us out of a little rut, is you have to speak up and say what you notice, because that's how you really help a team as an assistant coach.
Right. And sometimes head coaches are getting frustrated. So they need to be told that.
I have a question kind of for both of you, since you both coached, like, I know you both coach 12, 13-year-olds and then also 17 and 18. Going off of what Ron just said, he said, like, especially with 13s, like, you kind of get stuck in a drill and it's not really working out. And so you kind of got to take a break, move on, maybe come back. But do you think that that's an age thing, to where, like, if you're 13, it's like, dang, it's not clicking, we kind of got to move on to get the ball rolling again, versus, like, if it's an 18s team, no, we got to beat this drill? Do you have any, like, thoughts on that?
Ron, I'll defer to you. Ron, why don't you go ahead?
Well, okay, yeah, you can come in after. Well, I agree. 18s, you don't abandon things as fast, or 17s, 18s, or even 16s. But I still believe that sometimes you have to, regardless of their age. But I think obviously 13-year-olds, they're gonna, lack of a better term, they're gonna fail more often.
Yeah.
And where they're just gonna get frustrated and get worse. And you have to take it. Whereas the older ones, sometimes it's lack of focus, or just not their day, or they're having a bad day. So yeah, age has something to do with how much longer you stay with it. Sure.
And you just mentioned about at that 13s. This applies to Brian as well with the 13s, 14s division. And for our non-volleyball followers out there, when we say 13s and 14s, that just means 13 and under, 14 and under. But Brian mentioned, you know, at that age, you have a lot of kids that this is their first experience with volleyball. And if you keep harping on a drill that's just failure, and getting frustrated with them, they're probably not going to have fun. Right. And one of my sports psych teachers at Fresno State, one of his big things was at that early age. I know some people might say this is soft, but at early ages, they need to enjoy it. Otherwise, they're not going to come back. You're going to get people playing 1 year and they're going to be like, that was not fun. Right. So when we're doing drills like this, we still need to make sure they're learning and enjoying it. Otherwise, their as Brian calls it, their volleyball journeys are going to be quite short. And Brian, sorry if I interrupted you there, going off of what Ron said, but I wanted to throw that in there.
Well, also for Brian, I mean, you can also talk on like the collegiate level as well. Like, what do you see? Because it does change. Like, personally, I know that changes. Like, we would spend a whole practice in one drill, unfortunately. So, like, what do you have to say, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so it's kind of an ebb and flow of a person's career. I think it's definitely an individual journey. Not everybody on every team is exactly the same. I can speak to, you know, having been around Erica for a long time, that you're probably one of the most competitive people I've ever met, you know, and so drills that are competitive, you know, that's where you shine, you know, that's where, you know, you start to see the difference in athletes, you know, and it's not right or wrong. It's just how a drill designed and how it makes you click, you know, a little bit better, you know, again, at the 13s, 14s age group, and I've been there for about 7-8 years. At this point, you know, it's something where for me as a coach, it's definitely keeps me sane because the perspective is a little bit different at that age. At 17s, 18s, you know, they've got a lot going on personally. They've got a lot going on, you know, academically, you know, there's a lot of other outside forces in their lives. Not to say that academics isn't important at a 13 or 14 age level, but there's a lot of outside influences that come into that. And so the mindset coming into practice can be definitely different. And so you've got to plan accordingly. You know, I've had teams at the 17s, not 18s really, but at the 17s age group where it just wasn't the right for me. You know, from the technical perspective, I definitely enjoy it. You can do all kinds of cool things as far as running pushes, crosses, you know, ones, you know, and doing all that stuff. But if you're not going to be having fun, and this is a conversation that Ron and I have had a lot over the years, you know, and definitely somebody who I value his opinion on this, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're not having fun with it, if you're not enjoying it, and then being at Gavilan, you know, and that's a whole different, you know, and Erica, you can speak to this, and Luke, you've seen it with the college athletics, that once you pass, you know, high school, it's not your job because you're getting some type of monetary supplementation, whether it be physical cash or it be that you get to register for classes early, and it's a quote unquote paid position that you are on that team, and you don't have to be there, you know, and it's upwards of the decision of that head coach and that staff to keep you there or not keep you there. And that's something that I think is definitely missed, you know, in translation, and being I know this is further in our conversation, but a club director and getting these kids to understand and families to understand that the ball game changes completely. You know, when you now leave, now, Erica, you having the junior college experience, you know, you obviously see that there's a weird microcosm in that JC level that exists, you know, as far as kind of treating it like a high school experience, but it's not, you know, and that's where, you know, a mentor of mine and Erica was coached by this man, Kevin Kramer, had a heck of a time, you know, every year getting them to understand that it's different. It's not, this is not just show up and you pay your fees and you get to play. This is, we're competing for championships. This is getting you to the next level to get a way for you to provide for yourself to get an education at that 4-year school. And so, you know, that changes the dynamic completely. But going back to the kind of the goals of practice and, you know, competitive versus non-competitive, you know, ultimately, you know, sports are competitive, you know, that's, you know, but you have to have the right perspective. And so, you know, in the drill design, you know, and I know that's where young coaches get really caught up, because I was there 10 years ago. You know, if I design this great drill, then we're going to have a great practice. Well, I was at USA Volleyball a few years ago, taking their CAP education, which is our one of the governing bodies of our sport. And, in their level one, they have a not a drill, but an exercise where they'd say, I want you to design your best drill. And you got everything all over the map. It was probably a seminar of about 100 coaches. And I designed this great drill where it was kind of like, for those that are familiar, a W drill where you had to dig a ball and then you had to, then you had to cover a tip and then you had to chase down a ball into the corner. And it had like 7 or 8 components in it. Ultimately, John Kessel, who just left USA Volleyball and is definitely if you guys are looking for resources on, getting more kids involved about growing the sport, he was USA Volleyball's guy for a long time. And so what it basically said, he basically said, why don't you just play volleyball? And that was basically the gist of it. And so in front of 99 of my peers, I was like, oh, well, that's simpler. And we could just play 6-on-6. So, that's a funny story that, we experienced. And, a longtime coach locally that was at Live Oak, Laura Coleman, was in the same class. And she's like, Brian, you idiot. And I was like, that's me. So, but, again, as long as it's fun and they're engaged and we're not standing around, ultimately those are the goals of practice, and whether it be in a school setting where they don't have to be there because you get to pick your kids, a club setting where they're paying to be there, but you still pick your kids, or a college setting where you're picked to be there. And if you don't want to get it done, there's somebody else that will get it done. Irregardless, if it's not fun and you're not engaged at any level, that's really kind of, what should be, in my opinion, the goals of practice and therefore, the goals of the team, moving forward.
Yeah. And, like you said earlier too, we can do all this breaking down. Sports are competitive, right? And especially at the high school level, right, Erica, when we're thinking about what we're going to do in practice, we're also getting ready for a tournament this weekend, right? You know what I mean? Or an upcoming game.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like kind of leading into the next thing. Like, you can practice all week, you can have your goals, you can be like preparing your group the best that you think, you think that they're looking sharp, and then you show up to tournament or game day and that's the real test, right? And doesn't matter if you did drills in practice or if you played 6-on-6, you show up to game day and it's like, okay, it's time, the lights are on, right? So how do you, I guess we'll start with Coach B. How do you, as a coach or even a club director, how do you define a successful tournament or game day?
Well, I mean, the traditional way is obviously how many wins you have, but
right.
I've found that even if you've lost every match, if you've got girls that couldn't perform under pressure or completely just, they look scared or whatever, and then this time they didn't, and there's a few plays that you just weren't able to do before. I mean, I've had many tournaments where we didn't win and I felt they were good because we got better. I mean, even, this year, the team that you and I coached, they were not good this year in the beginning. And, I still felt that you could see it coming. And when you can look beyond those little failures in the beginning and just know that they're growing, and that's the whole thing. I think it's perspective of what coaches, if you can just look through the failures, which is what volleyball is. It's a bunch of failures that you just get better from it each time. And I don't know, that's one of the biggest things is why we want to play so much, is so you can get through these failures to get better, because that's the only way, is you learn from each time you can't do it.
And Ron, so, I think you just hit it on the head with something that a lot of young coaches have a problem with. And I'm very guilty of that very early on when I started coaching, was I look big picture. I look at just wins and losses too much. Like, instead of, a great example that I can think of this was at one of the freshman tournaments that I was at with Chapa this year. I'm not going to mention a girl's name without asking your permission first, but we had a setter that, we worked really hard on her defense. And we lost a game against a good team, but man, like I could not even describe to you like the strides she made defensively in that game. Like we had good hitters pulling line at her, like cranking it at her. Like, first of all, shocking that it was a freshman doing that, cranking it that hard down the line. But like, even though we lost, it was like, oh my gosh, look at our defense.
Heck
like,
yeah.
Like we are getting better. And granted, it wasn't like, it wasn't a tournament that we lost every game, anything like that. We lost that individual game, but like it clicked to the girls like, oh man, like we can hang with them on defense. Like it's all coming together. And sorry, Brian, I interrupted you again. Go ahead and touch on that. Sorry. That just brought up a memory for me that I had to share.
Sure. Well, isn't this what this is about? I mean, it's having the dialogue of, young coaches versus, I feel like I'm in the middle part of, my coaching, and Coach B, who's obviously the most experienced in our group here. But it's just having a dialogue and having, experiences, and we all grow from those experiences. I've always felt, that, we're more allies than we are enemies, where I've definitely reached out to other coaches and, how do you do it? I mean, that's
so
really
true.
Kind of how Coach Ron and I met. I was impressed with his Watsonville program of these gals who were maybe 5'2", 5'4" in the front row, and somehow they were kicking the butts of other teams that were definitely more physically dominating. But it was the pursuit of how do his teams compete still, and obviously have a complete disadvantage. And so defining what's a good game or a good day or, in a tournament, I've had a long journey with this topic, and I credit Ron to giving me better perspective over, my whole change in coaching actually is a direct result of a story. And Ron, if you're okay with it, I'd like to share it in this podcast.
Yeah.
Sure. And so it was about 6 years ago, I believe. We were at a club tournament. Ron was early for his wave, which we all know Ron's always early. He's always prepared, which is it's something I admire about him. And, I'm sitting at the end of the bench, just dejected and upset. And, for those that know my facial expressions, which you're probably seeing them anyways, because I'm not aware when I do it, I was just unhappy. And, I was probably upset at the official and, and all that. Good, as we've all been there. I was one of the worst. So, and he just simply comes up to me and says, "Hey, Brian, what's going on?" And we had just formed a new alliance as a club, even though Ron and I had known each other for several years. But we finally had gotten our local community to come together and, say there's one place where you can come play and it's going to be a great option. And this will lead into the director part of it. But, getting back to the story, it was, well, Brian, why are you so upset? One, I think I claimed I wasn't upset, which I was. And so so I said, well, I just can't, we're not getting better. We're, I'm frustrated, blah, 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 blah. Just insert all the common, coach complaints. And, he says, Brian, you're too much on the sideline. And it kind of caught me off guard. As he eats his burrito that he's so happy that he got outside. And, the gist of the story is that just, I didn't have the right perspective of what was actually important. And so that kind of goes back to, my answer, with the question you guys posed, one, were we properly prepared? And so, do we have goals when we're at practice? Are we getting enough sleep and nutrition, or are we looking at the whole picture here, not just the wins and the losses? Did we execute the strategies, just like you guys said about your right back defense? Did we do that? If we did, then we're successful, and that has nothing to do with what the little flip chart says. Again, did we execute, our strategy? And if we did, I took this, and I honestly can't tell you where I borrowed this from, and that's all coaching is really for newer coaches. You just borrow ideas and you make them your own, and eventually you say them so many times that people think that they're yours, when I can tell you everything that I have is all borrowed. So it's the rule of 5 to 1. So, I think the science says it's supposed to be 12 to 1, which is impossible. But, are you complimenting, or are you giving 5 pieces of positive feedback to your athletes versus 1 needs improvement? Not failures, but needs improvement. And so how you pose that, or how you frame those pieces of information that you're translating to your athletes is super important. And so, and then another big thing is, did we make adjustments? You might lose a match.
Heck yeah.
But did you call a timeout? Did you say, Luke, I need you to hold middle back, even if the block swings completely wide, I need you to hold middle back, because that's where she's going to hit, or that's where he's going to hit, and if they can execute that, then that's success. They're taking the coaching, they're taking the feedback, and they're applying it. Whether they're successful and they get the dig, or whether they completely fail and they get 6-packed in the face, that's irrelevant. For that particular, obviously you don't want them to get hit. You want them to be safe out there. And then ultimately, did we have fun? And that's what matters. I know I mentioned already, but another good, who I feel is a mentor, and I don't know him personally, but I've met him a few times, John Kessel. One of his big things which is in his mission statement, which is he doesn't want to be a kid's last coach. And that you can go very philosophically into that, but ultimately it breaks down to the core of I would assume why a lot of people coach is you want to help people get better. And if you're that kid's last coach, you were directly correlated to something that happened that made them give up the game, which obviously we know you can play this game for a long, long time if you go to Carmel Beach every Saturday and Sunday.
and get your butt kicked by Ron.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Debatable.
So, and that, this all broke down to that, Brian, you need to understand, and this was the gist of Ron's, other than my demeanor, the gist of it is that it's process over outcome. And if you trust in the process and you just keep working hard and you keep bettering yourself, that the outcome will come. It's just a direct result of your process, but if you're not invested in the process, then you're not going to get there. So, it's a funny story that, we laugh about to this day, and that, I don't know if Ron will ever know how important that conversation really was to keeping me involved in coaching. And at that point I wasn't at the college level, but I probably wouldn't be there had that conversation not happened. And that's where you draw information from everybody, and Erica, we've had great conversations over the years, as you transition into more of a coach, and the game playing wise is a little bit past you, at least at the, the competitive level of, college, school, all that. And, Luke, seeing you grow as a coach and remembering you as on the boys side, and you were setting, and, I was kind of involved in the boys side of the game at that point, but not really. And at that point I hadn't, this is a long while back. So, I had learned so much, since then. And so, just again, we get so wrapped up in these tournament days, and that, oh my gosh, we need to qualify, we need to go to nationals, we need to do, on the club side of it, or we need to win a conference championship. Well, that's all a result of the process that you took to get there. And so, another thing that came up this last year, or 2 years ago now, at Gavilan was, Kevin Kramer created this thing called, your internal playlist. What song is playing right now to get you to where you need to go? Is it Metallica? Is it, Meatloaf? Is it, I'm not very good, I'm not musical, but, what's playing on your playlist right now to get you to that next step? And so again, it's process, and ever since that's happened for me, things have changed. Now, have I won every match, since then? Absolutely not. We've lost probably more than we've won, but, back to something that Ron and I talk about all the time, because, I'm human. I still get dejected when we don't have great days on the court, or it just doesn't go our way. And, there was one team that won it all today. And there is 25, 100, 2,000 teams, that didn't win. They ended their day on a loss. So ultimately, what matters? Process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you totally hit on something too, about, I always hear you tell the girls about their volley journey. You have your own volley journey as well. We all do. And, volley journey doesn't end when, and this doesn't have to be volleyball, right? This can apply to baseball, basketball, everything. Just because your playing days end doesn't mean your time in the sport ends.
Totally.
And like, I consider my volley journey is still going on right now as a coach, just as all of ours are. And, it's gotten you from an assistant coach, direct, assistant coaches, stuff like that. And now you're a club director, and that's what we really want to transition to now. I know you touched on it a little bit, but we see a lot of, clubs are just a little different, right? And how important is that culture in a club's success, if that makes sense?
I think I'd like to start, Ron, with this one. I think it's everything. Being obviously that I've been a little more nomadic in my club journey, where if you go over Ron's resume, I mean, he's pretty much been a club director his whole club experience, because he was the oldest, most responsible person in the group. I'm not saying that age has anything to do with it, because I definitely became a club director way younger than I probably should have. But that it's something that the culture of your club, it seeps into every nook and cranny of what you do, and you really have to maintain true to what your personal mission statement, what you believe in, and that upholds the culture of the club. And if that doesn't mesh, then your length in the your time in the organization is probably going to be cut short. So it's finding, it's one of the best exercises I've ever done as a coach was create a mission statement. And that's something that I think it was a seminar that Terry Liskevich, who used to coach the U.S. national team back in the 80s or 90s at this point. He has his staff, whatever program he's been a part of, do that every year, and it has to be in their top right drawer so that they can address it every single year. And I think that that's something that, as a club director, I failed at in connecting with coaches, and really kind of making sure. I don't even know, honestly, if our current coaches at Rush know where the club, all that information on our website is, which is partially my fault because I designed the website. But, as I've in quarantine time, especially, and we're looking at a lot of different things for our organizations and how can we be better on the other side of this, that it's something that needs to be apparent, because it doesn't work otherwise. If your personal, what you believe is what should be a club culture, doesn't mesh with the organization, then that's when you see short careers at clubs, and you see people, moving around. Ron?
Well, I agree 100%. I mean, the culture, the behavior that you set, and this is a thing, even though I've done this for a while, I'm nowhere near, every year you reevaluate and just go, there's so many things that you wish you would have done and emulated to your staff, to the parents, and as we talk about the culture. I mean, it's a standard. I believe in, you see a club and you already you form an opinion of going, well, those people are, definitely not on the same wavelength, and I'm just being nice. Those are nice words. And it's like I would never, none of our coaches, parents, kids would ever have that kind of attitude, behavior, philosophy. And and so, like Brian says, it's everything. I mean, especially if you want to be around, because if it's all over the board, people will leave, people will come, they don't know what you're about. So you have to set that tone and make sure that the message is, properly communicated to everybody, which is what those meetings of when you have your signing night and everything, all that should be taken care of.
Yeah, so I love that. And so, like, since both of you have been a club director and then also coached, and like going off of what you just said, like especially like letting people know like what you're about, basically, right? Like our club doesn't, like, we behave a certain way, we like act a certain way, whatever it is. And like, it's easy to say that as a coach, like to kind of control your team and then like let your team kind of disperse and affect the teams next to them practicing. But as a club director, or I guess being a club director, how has that affected you as a coach?
Ron, you want to go ahead?
Well, Erica, can you like break that down a little bit? I mean, kind of tell me exactly what you're asking me.
So I guess my question is, how has being a club director affected you as a coach?
Oh, well, I mean, even more so, you know, it's you have to walk the walk, you know, the talk, you know, you have to, if you want your staff to do what you're saying and what's your mission statement, I mean, it's even more pressure. I mean, the one thing that Brian and I'm going to tell that story. Is that okay, Brian, about like how we dealt with issues as coaches this year a little bit? I mean, I can obviously no names.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, in general, right? I mean, as a coach, you're trying to lead by example. So there's a little bit more pressure. And I have never ever worried about winning. Probably in my last, I'd say, maybe in my last 12 years of coaching. Obviously, since it's 25, my first 12 were, I'm just like everybody else. I wanted to win, but then I realized that wasn't the right way. So now, as where I'm at now, you know, seeing our coaches and me when I'm coaching has led to trying to protect people, and it doesn't work, you know. So the pressure of it has affected like being a director and a coach, because you know what you would do, and so you're watching things happen, you know, and instead of people, again, this goes to coaching kids, if you don't let people fail and you try to grab them before they do, you're not gaining anything. I don't know if am I getting off topic?
No, this is perfect.
Yeah,
You're hitting it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a few issues where we stepped in and as a director and a coach, and it hasn't worked out right the way it should have been, because people don't realize when they have not done well, because we kind of protected them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can kind of gather what I'm saying, it's just, so I mean, we've learned. And as far as coaching and being a director, I don't know, I love it, because you want to show people this is the way that you know, I want it done. And, you know, I have the confidence in myself to lead by example. So that's my take of that. Pressure wise, I don't feel it. I actually embrace it, because that's, you know, I want people to follow what I'm doing if I'm asking them to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Brian? I don't know.
And yeah, I totally agree in that sentiment. You know, being co-directors and being, you know, that Ron and I lead a volleyball club together. We obviously have different philosophies. We have different, you know, they're not exactly the same, but they do align. And so, you know, kind of going forward, and obviously there's a division of work and labor, you know, amongst, you know, helping run the club that, you know, Ron and I have had to figure out over the past 4 years, you know. And so I feel like we're trending towards a good direction, but I can tell you it's a daily process, you know, where we have long conversations. I wouldn't even know what the division of how much I talk to Ron versus everyone else in the club, but it's definitely probably 99 to 1%.
Yeah.
You know, but again, as long as, you know, and I can't say that we've always agreed. I can tell you that we've definitely disagreed, you know, but it's being, you know, that we've done this for a while, or I've done this for a while, you know, and Ron much longer than I, you know, that we have to make sure that something that I definitely struggled with, you know, is dividing myself as a coach and getting my team prepared and ready, and then dealing with 4 or 5 other teams that are practicing on the same night, and their needs and what they need to get done. And, you know, they need a piece of uniform gear. And so I'm definitely also not a great delegator, which is something, you know, in leadership that you have to have. And so, you know, I've gotten better, you know, and with, you know, Ron pleading with me to delegate some of this stuff out because he's in the same boat, you know. And so I think we've gotten a little bit better about that, you know, but it's something, you know, where I know newer coaches especially don't get the totality of what it takes to run the whole thing. And I feel like those that do it well you're never going to see that because they don't see the 25 plus hours that week that you put in to get everything. So that, practice runs smoothly, that you have the equipment, that you know where you're going, that there's the proper links, or where to seek the information, and so, and some of that I'm guilty of because I just assume that everyone knows, when it was blaringly obvious to me that people don't even know the governing body that they're playing for, whether it be the NCVA or the AAU or, what qualifiers or what are qualifiers versus other President's Day tournament, and so, I will tell you that it is on our website, but people don't always get to that point of the information. And so, being where I got into this as I know Luke mentioned, as a director of ops, which is basically a fictitious title that was given to me years ago because that was what my background was. I was working on a business degree. I really didn't know much about volleyball. I played golf in high school, but all my best friends were volleyball players. But what I had done is I had done some teaching through the game of golf, and so, and then, one of my personality traits is that I do have an addictive personality. Luckily, none of those have been super negative. But, I did become addicted to the sport where I wanted to learn everything and anything about it. And any form of it, whether it be snow or beach or fours or sixes or 9-man or, all those different forms of it. And, I find it all interesting. And I think it's a beautiful game, and it truly, I've never found a game that, and this is getting completely off topic, but that momentum shifts completely in a blink of an eye. And it could be the way that I look at a certain athlete and then her mood goes through the floor. And now we're all suffering for it. And I feel that directly translates to being a club director. I could look at Erica a certain way and she thinks that I'm pissed off at her. And now, so her practice goes to shit. And sorry if there's not.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. And it ruins her day. And, and that's where I have to learn how to control my facial expressions, not only as a coach, but as a director. And that, that Rush, or blank put in, whatever club is operating, within its mission statement and its goals. And so, it is a larger thing, but I think to answer the question specifically, I think just learning that you have to delegate, and that there is there's a time and a place for it all, and if you delegate it properly, it looks easy. I haven't gotten there yet, and I'm very, very far away from it, but that we've been very fortunate to have an amazing staff and people that are truly passionate and love the game and aren't there for just a paycheck. And I think that's one of our big things, and that, we have long, deep relationships with, pretty much everyone who coaches in our organization, and that we try to build those. I think that's something that Ron's brilliant at is building those relationships to where, they're people you want to hang around with. They're people that you would hang out with on the weekend, that, you can pick up after not seeing them for 7 months, 10 months, 2 years, and nothing's changed, and
Totally.
that building those relationships is ultimately, with also including fun, is what matters, and so I've, being 10 plus years into this now, I truly enjoy when I haven't seen so-and-so for so long, and I get to hear that they're doing amazing and they're having kids or they're getting married, or, a few years ago, the kids that I gave their first volleyball clinic to, are now playing at the 4-year level, and it's amazing to see their progression, and that they're going to be amazing something else, because they're not going to be professional volleyball players, but they're going to be something amazing because of their journey. And I had a little bit to do with that, as a director for them, and also as a coach.
Yeah, that's great stuff. You love hearing stories like that. It just makes you love it even more. Now, segue into another perspective you guys have that I'm so excited to bring up to you guys. Both of these guys are also officials in our area. Okay. First of all, I want to debunk any theory here for other coaches, athletes, parents, parents especially. I can promise you, refs do not wake up in the morning and see your daughter's JV team on the schedule and say, oh man, I can't wait to screw him over. I promise you that's not the process. Okay. And Ron, Brian, you can confirm that for me.
Yeah, I'd love to just tell people, don't flatter yourself. I'm not thinking about you when I wake up in the morning.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're all human. You know, I honestly tell you that I don't sit here creating diabolical plans for said, high school or club or, I don't have that much energy to devote to that. God bless those that do, if there are out there, but every official that I know, at least in our local area, I know that truly are there because they love and enjoy it. Whether they were players or whether they came into it via another sport, or, they initially came into it because it was a quick $25 a match that they can make. They truly want to get better and they want to be there and conduct a game that ultimately they shouldn't really even be noticeable. Is the sign of a good official, is that
Cool.
match flows, in a way that you hear the whistle, but you really don't get that there's one standing and there's one, on the ground, and what they really do. I would encourage those that don't understand what the point of the officials and what their hand signals are is to maybe learn them. The information is out there and it's free, either through NFSH or PSI. The information is out there, and it brings you to a whole nother level of understanding of the game. And, that way, if it's something you disagree with, or that you thought it went a different way, remember that ultimately it's a judgment call. So like in other sports, you may not always agree with it, but it's our judgment. But again, going back to it, I don't sit here and diabolically think of how to make it worse. Again, don't have that energy, have too many other things, as Ron can definitely, that I go all over the map, and I'm probably one of the most random people that you'll ever meet. And I pivot.
No.
I pivot on a dime. So, I am that person. Squirrel.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, staying on with the whole official things, I've heard almost every coach that I've asked this about. So many coaches have told me, man, I wish I knew what I know now when I was a player. Like, I would have been such a better player. Is there anything that you wish other coaches knew about officiating? Like, that you as an official now were like, man, I wish I knew that when I was coaching. Right? Does that make sense?
Or it even affects you now, like since you're still a coach.
Yeah.
You want me first, Brian? Yeah?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Ron?
Okay. Well, the one thing that I learned immediately when I became an official, and I haven't stopped coaching since I've been an official, so it all goes hand in hand.
Right.
So when I became an official, the first thing that I realized is that I didn't know all the rules, which is very embarrassing. And it's, you think, I thought I did, obviously, and you find out when you become an official that there's so many little things. And so a lot of the arguments that happen are based on the lack of knowledge of a coach. And it's, that is one thing. And so when I became more obviously proficient at the rules, I became a better coach. Becoming an official gave me the opportunity to watch other coaches completely mess up their team because they were focused on the officiating. And I made sure to take note that it's never going to be me if it ever was again. And you sit there as an official and, you're telling yourself, well, timeout's coming. If you're really into being official, when a timeout should be called. And so when it's not called and you're sitting there like, you look at your partner and you shrug, you go, okay. And then you blow and you're like, and so your opinion of coaches become more, you just become smarter at what I deem is smarter. And because you just become more into the game and know the little moments. So it's definitely helped me become a better coach. I mean, and then I never realized when you're officiating until obviously I did, was you're not calling things because it's an infraction. You're actually trying to find the middle ground of any rule to allow play to continue. That's what you're doing. You're not, you're not trying to stop play. So you're just trying to find the middle ground. And coaches don't understand that. So they're wanting a call then it's like, well, if I call that, then this game will never be fluid.
Yeah, and you know,
So,
I feel like you see that a lot at the younger levels, especially where you get coaches that, you know, are at the 13s age or freshman volleyball age are crying for doubles when it's like, do you, you and I have talked about this
do you
before.
really, do you really want to call that?
Yeah, do you really want me to call doubles and it's just going to be, taking turns serving because both setters are having insane spin every time? Like coaches don't think about that. It's only like, why are you calling it on my setter? Yeah. And that kind of and that kind of segues right into our last question for you guys is would you guys say there is a correct way to talk to an official?
I being the biggest offender of this, absolutely there is. I am guilty as charged. I am not one to throw the first rock on this topic. This goes full circle back to the conversation where Ron's sitting with me on the end of a bench at I think it was San Jose Convention Center, eating his burrito, and there is, to answer your question, it's you want to approach him or her in a calm and genuine manner. Anger and frustration or being condescending are never going to get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the officials are, and this is going back to my original point when we started talking about officials, is that they're there for the love of the game. We're not getting paid billions of dollars to do this, and irregardless of the monetary amount, just that we're here to officiate a game that hopefully is beautiful and is consistent and it flows, and that you're not noticing the official in any way. So again, getting back to knowing the rules, I don't know how many coaches know that they're not supposed to yell across the court, that they're supposed to go through their floor captain, and then understanding that you're sending for myself, you're sending a 13 or 12-year-old girl to go talk to a probably 40, 50, 60-year-old person, adult, and trying to relay a message when you're fired up and you're not happy with the call as a coach, or your parents are yelling and bickering. And, that goes back to, something that I don't think we've completely talked about, but that as a coach, you are directly responsible / have the responsibility to control what's going on within your team, what your kids are worrying about, and what your parents, as a club part of it or as a high school part of it, what your parents are. And if you as a head coach of a program are not dictating or narrating that narrative, then they're going to act the way they're going to act.
Totally.
So
you just absolutely nailed it. Even just as a coach, I notice it. Like, you'll see the coaches that are freaking out. I'm going to take a guess. Their kids are going to freak out. If they look over and their coach is screaming at the ref, that tells them that it's okay. And they're going to start doing it. And like I tell my boys this all the time, my JV boys, do you really think getting mad at the official and yelling at them is really going to make them change the call? If one of my JV players starts yelling at Ron on the stand, do you think Ron's going to be like, oh, you know what, you're right? No, it's not going to happen. And I just want to tell a little quick story before we get to Ron is this last, short season of boys volleyball that we had in high school before everything happened. I watched Ron officiate a game where there was a setter at the varsity level. It wasn't in a school that I coach at, but it was at another school that was dropping it to his neck, right? And for people that don't know volleyball, that's a very big lift. And they kept arguing with Ron, saying that wasn't a double. And it's kind of like, you don't know the difference between a double and a lift, but you're arguing. It goes right back to know the rules, know the signs. Like Brian said, it's free. Like, look it up. You can find it on Google in 2 seconds. I can promise you. Before you start disagreeing with a ref, at least know what you're talking about. And go ahead, Ron, getting to you on that whole situation.
Well, you just, like you said, and talking to a ref, it's all about people. And if you want something, definitely you're not going to get it if you're going to berate a person. You're actually going to get the opposite. And the one advice that I could give coaches, players, or parents, anybody, if you just, calmly address your concern, just calmly ask. Any ref will usually respond with why they called something, or that whatever. I guarantee you, if the other side is the complete opposite as you, and this is human nature, and it's just the way it is. If one side is down someone's throat, and then the other side is just, I'm not going to say accepting, because you have to accept the call. Both sides accept it. But if you're just like, hey, you tell your kids, move on. It's the call. It's the call. If there's a 50-50 play, I mean, I'll give you a guess of who's going to get that call.
Yeah.
And people can't figure that out, especially the yellers, the coaches that just completely go crazy. They haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
And so the proper way to talk to an official is with respect and try to be as calm as possible. That's all we ask.
Almost more to get an understanding of why you called it, not what the heck's wrong with you. Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, and I can tell you this, and one thing I've learned from really good officials is, we do make mistakes. They've said that. And I saw the best officials when a coach is mad and they completely chunk the call. And I've watched the official look at the coach and tap his own chest and go, my bad. I missed that, coach. Mm-hmm. And then the coach kind of sits there and goes, okay, yes. And then they're calm. They're just like, okay.
Totally.
That's all they wanted. That's all they wanted.
And I promise you, it'll make the kids more calm, because if they look over at you on the bench and you're calm and collected, that's going to help the kids calm down a lot. I learned that personally. If I stay calm, they're just like, okay, coach isn't freaking out. We're still good.
Yeah. And I also feel like, going off of that, like, as a coach, don't make the official part of the game. Like Brian or Coach B said, like, it should be like they're not even there. But in reality, like, I know that there's plenty of times, especially with me and Ron, like, he's the head coach and I'm the assistant. And even with you, Luke, as my assistant, like, plenty of times the girls look over at us freaking out, like, coach, what the heck? And we just look at them and we're like, just go, just play, serve the ball, receive.
That plays
over.
And
it just shows them, and it just shows them, like, okay, coach doesn't care. I guess I can't care. If coach doesn't care, she's not mad, I'm going to move on.
Yep. And that just sums it up really well. Man, really good stuff. I mean, kind of my last note here is conversations with these guys over the years is really one of the inspirations for this. Like
100%.
Sitting on the bleachers before a club practice with Ron and Brian, or at a tournament, like Brian said, sitting on the end of a bench at San Jose Convention Center, just having a conversation about something. And it's just like, man, there's a lot of people out there that would really benefit from this conversation, this advice that I just got from them. Right. So I just really want to thank you guys for coming on. Always great to talk to you guys. I know Chapa feels the same way. It's always great to talk to you guys. We haven't gotten to see you guys as much with everything going on, but staying safe. We'll get volleyball again one day.
Having to go out onto the beach and stay on different courts. That's fun.
Sorry.
But yeah, you know what?
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And I also want to thank everybody. We've gotten a lot of early support for the podcast. It's meant a whole lot to us. All of your messages saying that you love it and you love the idea and you can't wait, it means a lot to us. It gets us even more excited to record an episode. So thank you very much. If you guys haven't yet, go ahead and follow us on Instagram at Comparing Clipboards Pod, on Twitter at Comparing Clips, Facebook, Comparing Clipboards Podcast. And you know what? If you don't like social media, that's all right. You can go ahead and email us at comparingclipboards@gmail.com. Go ahead and let us know any topics you want to hear about. If you are interested in coming on, let us know. We can figure something out. And yeah, we're going forward. We're looking forward to more guests and more great advice like we got from these two gentlemen today. So thank you again. And we'll see you guys. And we'll see you guys next time.
Appreciate it.